There's a phase on the twin flame and spiritual awakening journey where you stop people pleasing. You stop adjusting yourself to keep the connection alive. You become tired of managing someone else's uncertainties. And you realize you cannot keep playing along with push-pull dynamics anymore. And almost immediately, your relationships begin to change. Some become stronger and others will fall away. If we haven't met before, I'm Hanneke. I write and speak about sacred union, the twin flame journey, embodiment, and what actually happens after the first spiritual awakening. And in this video, I want to talk about why relationships fall away after spiritual awakening and what is actually happening beneath the surface when that begins. Now, this phase usually comes after that initial awakening and after the dark night has stripped away all of the illusions and after something has been broken open. Then something else begins. You're invited back into the world, not as the person that you were before, but as someone with more awareness, with more sensitivity and more inner truth. And that's where it becomes real, because stepping into truth doesn't change just how you feel inside, but it begins to reorganize your relationships. You begin to notice where you used to choose harmony over honesty, where you softened your own edges to remain connected, where you regulated the emotional atmosphere of the connection instead of staying in your own center. And as authenticity increases, boundaries, they naturally become clearer. And when they become clearer, not everyone responds the same way. A beautiful soul in my Living Sophia community asked a question that captures this phase perfectly. She asked, when I stopped people-pleasing and began setting boundaries, some people distanced themselves. Does this mean that the soul contract is complete, or is this subconscious avoidance from both ends? Thank you so much for asking this question if you're listening. So let's get into this. When you shift from people-pleasing into boundary setting, you are creating a phase shift in the relational field. It reorganizes the dynamic. So before, in the people-pleasing phase, the system between you and others was organized around harmony. Your nervous system was wired to maintain smoothness, to minimize friction, to anticipate needs, and that creates a certain stability inside the relationship system. And when you begin choosing yourself, the organizing principle underneath it changes and the relationship system has to recalibrate. But systems don't recalibrate without reaction. Relationship functions like a living system, and each person has a role in the system. And when one role changes, the entire structure adjusts, and some systems expand to accommodate the new configuration, and others destabilize because the old balance depended on you abandoning yourself slightly or a lot, just depends on the type of connection. So when people distance themselves, it doesn't automatically mean that the soul contract is complete, nor that there is subconscious avoidance from both ends. It means that the previous relational structure is no longer sustainable in its old form. It's just a recalibration. So the question here is actually, am I abandoning myself less? And if the answer is yes, then something healthy is happening, even if it feels uncomfortable for the moment. But there is an important distinction that we have to make at this point. There is a distinction between differentiation and avoidance. Differentiation means I can remain connected with someone else while being distinct. I don't merge, I don't collapse, I don't lose my center. I stay in contact with myself while I am in contact with another person. So this means I have my own center, my own energy field, and from that center, you resonate with the other person. Avoidance means I withdraw to escape discomfort, I detach to avoid vulnerability, and I protect myself by disconnecting. So if you feel that you are still open, but simply no longer go into self-betraying, you stay true to yourself, and you feel that there is no resonance anymore, that's different from avoiding someone because it feels uncomfortable or because you want to protect yourself. Autonomy is not the same as detachment. Autonomy says, I stand in my truth and I allow you to respond however you respond and whenever you respond. And detachment says, I shut down my care for you so I don't feel the loss. If your heart is still open, even when people step back, that is autonomy. This is a shift from harmony to living from truth. Harmony is often maintained externally and truth is maintained internally. When harmony is no longer bought by self-abandonment, some relationships dissolve because they were built on a version of you that no longer exists. For me, this movement from maintaining harmony to shifting into embodying my truth became very clear through the connection with my divine counterpart. So we had been in a long separation, almost a year, and there was contact again. And I really wanted us to meet face to face. We were having contact through text messages, and he came in very interested, and so it was mutual. But when it came to meeting in the physical, he just kept doubting and agreeing to meet and then just cancel again. Well, you know how it is if you have a connection like that where they are coming in and out. And suddenly I had just had it. I was just so tired of playing that same game over and over again. You know, that game where you're both interested and suddenly they withdraw and it's like they're pulling away and you just feel what just happened and you want to get them back. And suddenly I was just so tired of it. I didn't want to bridge that gap anymore. I felt, well, if you don't want to come over, then just don't. I know what I want and it's up to you if you want to come over or not. And it was so very scary to say that. I was so scared of losing the connection, of losing him, of losing the momentum that we were on. We were getting closer again. But I was so much more tired of abandoning myself. And what happened was, I stood in my truth. I embodied my truth. I communicated it and I let it go. And at first, nothing happened. And he was like, okay. But then, a couple of days, maybe weeks later, I don't remember, he came in closer again. And later he said to me, yeah, I really respected what you said. I really respected that. So when you start to embody your truth and you start to communicate from that center, like I said, some connections, they become stronger. And that's what happened with my connection with my divine counterpart. On the other hand, in my friendships, a lot of friendships fell away. I had a beautiful friendship also with a man. We were best friends for 5 years. And I started doing the same thing in that friendship and it just completely dissolved. And it was very confrontational to see that many of my friendships were built on me bridging the gap. I was the one keeping the harmony. I overgave connection. And of course, I expected something in return. But that is the shift that we are moving out from in this phase. When we stop carrying the emotional weight of a connection, or stop reaching out first or opening up first, when we stop managing the connection in that way, something becomes visible. It becomes visible that some friendships aren't built on mutual effort. And when you stop self-abandoning, it's those type of connections that fall away. Or it can be friendships where you're mutually giving yourself up a lot for the connection. And when you stop doing that, the other person feels betrayed. Those connections fall away too. And that can be very scary because for a moment it can feel like everything is falling away at once. And there can be a void. But what I experienced is that this void is not the same as feeling alone or feeling empty. When you stop abandoning yourself, your own presence fills more space and you feel more whole from the inside. And the external connections, they may thin out for a while, but internally there's more coherence. And of course, there will be moments where your own balance will waver and you will question, where is everybody? Why am I alone now? What's wrong with me? But these moments, they become less and less. And what remains is a kind of steadiness. This whole entire movement from push-pull dynamics to exhaustion to boundaries to temporary loss and into inner coherence, that is the process that I'm writing about in my novel, Living Sophia. It's the integration phase of the spiritual awakening journey, of a twin flame journey after that first awakening, after that dark night of the soul or multiple dark nights of the soul, because it's not a linear process, of course, but it's a whole journey. That phase of the awakening where you decide that you will not stay stuck in those dynamics that drain you, even if they still feel sacred. Now, you might wonder whether this shift is part of your personality or your attachment style or even your astrological makeup. Or is it simply who you are becoming right now? Certain temperaments naturally lean towards independence. I know that I certainly do. But the question is not really about your label. The question is, are you detaching because you're protecting yourself? Or are you using sovereignty as alignment? And you can feel that difference in your body. And this is what I call the key of truth as a capacity. The key of truth is the capacity to remain internally aligned even when relational harmony shifts. So, in other words, to stay true to yourself even when it's very scary, even when you can lose connection. It's the capacity to tolerate temporary instability in order to live authentically, and it's the capacity to allow relational systems to reorganize without rushing to fix them. It's a capacity to choose integrity over immediate approval. It's embodying, I'm clear about what I want, and you can choose if you want to be a part of it, and then leave it. It's not about changing the other person. It's not about changing the system of the relationship. Not at all. It's about shifting from the inside out. And when this capacity to embody truth strengthens, a relationship either deepens into a greater mutual truth or they fall away, but both are outcomes of alignment. This capacity to stay in your truth is one of the foundational keys inside my Sacred Union course, where I guide this process of moving from this intense activation through a divine counterpart into a stable, embodied connection. So in this journey towards Sacred Union, this key is one of the developmental keys that stabilizes that movement, but there are 10 more. Now, why does the push-pull dynamic collapse when one person stops over-functioning, stops people-pleasing? And why does the attraction feel even stronger when you start to embody your own truth? And how do you even build that capacity to embody your truth? That's what I talk about in my Substack community. If you're interested in that, I will put the link up. But for now, if you're in this phase, know this: relationships falling away is not always loss. It is structural alignment. The real question is not who stays. The real question is whether you are more coherent than before. And I'm curious, have you experienced this shift? Have certain connections deepened while others dissolved? Please share in the comments. I always love to read them. And this is where I will leave you today. Have a nice day. Much love.